let's start writing some JavaScript. Yeah, sorry, you had a question. I have a keyboard shortcut for that. Did I talk about this yesterday? Maybe only in the afternoon. But there's a command built in code called surround with abbreviation with emmet or something. If you look at the website under tools, VS Code key bindings, thing is the command is built in, but there is no keyboard shortcut assigned to it by default. It's this one right here, wrap with abbreviation. I have it Shift Command A. So you highlight something, say Shift Command A, and you can just surround it with some tag, which is something you do a lot. So it's a really handy abbreviation to have, or keyboard shortcut to have. Yeah, good question. So let's make it do something when we submit the form. If it's still a tad overwhelming to make it do as much as adding something to a list, let's just make it do something. Break it down into the absolute smallest steps. Let's just make it do anything when you submit the darn thing. Make sure we can do the add event listener part correctly. Now, this time around, we're going to get out of some bad habits that we developed last time. So last time, all the functions we created were in the global scope. Meaning, well, from some other programming language, you probably get an idea of what I mean. But like we could go into the console and just run any of those functions, which was not a huge deal in something this small, but it can become a pretty serious issue if you're working on a big project. For one thing, what if you load a library and it reuses one of those names? It may not seem super likely to happen with things like render list item or whatever, but it's not uncommon for you to write little utility functions and give them super common names that seriously might be in some other library. So it's a good idea to just not put things in the global space if you can avoid it. So what we're going to do is make one object that's in the global space, and all of our other functions are going to be on that object. Wait, functions on an object? What? What do I mean? What are objects? Let's make an object called app. Why not? And we know, for a moment here, you don't need to follow along. I'm just going to make some stuff up for the sake of demonstration. Then I'm going to do what I'm really going to do. So we know we could give it any number of keys and values, and that those values could be anything. What'd you have for breakfast today, Will? Oak moke. Or we could say, so that's a string, right? How many times have you moved in your life, Max?
4.
It could be a number. It could be another object. Could it be a function? Why not? We can pass them around as arguments to other functions. Why couldn't we make them properties of an object? I'm going to put that comma there so I don't forget. So app is global at the moment. Let's keep that up there. Let's open up our dev tools here. Refresh. So I have app. Yeah, I have app. App.breakfast. Oakmoke. App.dinos. Got an array. Cool. So I can do things like app.dinos, square bracket 0. Uh-oh. Dinos is an object, not an array, sorry. It's an object that has an array in it, right? So like app.dinos.const carnivores. So I can say app.dinos.carnivores, square bracket 1, Allosaurus. App.say yeah. It's a function. If I want to run that function, I can say app.say yeah. Yeah. It totally works. We have a special name for functions that happen to be properties of objects. Anybody know that special name? Starts with an M? Methods, that's right. So functions that are properties of an object that you call using that dot are called methods. Now that comes from the object-oriented world. JavaScript is an object-oriented programming language, but it is not a classical object-oriented programming language. That is, it does not use classes as we think of them from other languages. ES6 did add a class keyword, but those still aren't quite classes as we know them, because the way it does inheritance is totally different. It uses prototypal inheritance instead of classical inheritance. We're not going to get into the gruesome details of what that means, but suffice to say it is object-oriented, but perhaps not in the way that you're used to. But still, we have objects with methods. And methods are inherently a little different from other functions, as we will discover in a bit. So I could not just type say yeah. Say yeah is not defined. I'd have to say app.say yeah. Yeah. Right? Cool. These particular properties are not terribly useful, but useful for demonstration for the moment. If I wanted some stuff to run right when the page loads, I'd have to call those things. So let's say I have some stuff that I want to happen when the page first loads. For example, I want to add an event listener first thing. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's just make some function that's going to run when the page loads. But we're not going to write that function out here. We're going to write it inside that app object. I'll just call it init. So I'll give app a key of init, and the value at that key is going to be a function. So that's basically an anonymous function that is the value of the key init on this object. So I could call that by saying app.init down here, right? If I don't put that there, that function is never going to run. I'm just going to define it on that object, but it'll never actually run. What do I want it to do? For the moment, I'm just going to console log init, just so I know that it worked. And again, you don't need to copy this necessarily. I'm just demonstrating how this is going to work, because that's not what I'm really going to put in init. Refresh the page, and right away, I get init in the command line. So we've got some code that runs when the page first loads, but now it's safely tucked away inside an object, so we're not polluting the global scope any more than we have to.